A flawless crystal skull seems to defy the very tools of the ancient world. This single image lies at the heart of one of history's most captivating puzzles, the crystal skull phenomenon. Some declare these artifacts are powerful relics from lost civilizations, while experts argue they are nothing more than brilliant fakes. By the end of our journey, you will possess a clear understanding of the truth behind these enigmatic objects, separating documented fact from compelling fiction. We will investigate why a famous skull was supposedly found beneath a Mayan altar, and how microscopic marks on its surface tell a completely different story. What does our lasting fascination with these objects truly reveal about us? There is something uniquely compelling about holding a human face rendered in flawless stone. Crystal skulls are more than just artifacts. They are mirrors reflecting our deepest fascinations back at us. Their allure is not accidental. It is a perfect storm of artistry, symbolism, and an irresistible whisper of the unknown. Crafted most often from pure, clear quartz, these objects possess an inherent magic. Light does not simply pass through them, it is captured and transformed, creating a dance of internal fire that feels alive. This visual spectacle suggests something beyond mere craftsmanship, something almost supernatural, but the true hook is the form itself. A skull is a universal symbol, an immediate and intimate reminder of our own mortality. Yet when carved from a material that seems to capture light and life, it creates a powerful contradiction. It is a symbol of death transformed into an object of stunning beauty. This paradox makes the skulls incredibly relatable. We are not looking at a strange pot or a cryptic tablet. We are looking at a version of ourselves, perfected in crystal. This potent combination has propelled them from the dusty shelves of collectors into the bright lights of global pop culture. Films like Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull did not invent their mystery. They tapped into a legend that was already thriving and amplified it for millions. In these stories, the skulls are not just artifacts. They are keys to lost cities and sources of unimaginable power. This cultural endorsement cemented their status, making the idea of a mystical crystal skull feel familiar and exciting. So why do these objects, above all others, hold such a powerful grip on our imagination? The answer lies in a three-part recipe. First, there is the undeniable artistry, the sheer skill required to shape unforgiving crystal into something so smooth and perfect. Then there is the alleged antiquity, the romantic claim that they are relics of a lost world, be it Atlantis or an advanced Maya civilization. But the final, most intoxicating ingredient is the promise of hidden knowledge. They are not presented as simple carvings, but as repositories of ancient wisdom or even advanced technology. This blend of beauty, age, and secret power is an irresistible lure, drawing in everyone from passionate believers to determined debunkers, all eager to uncover the truth buried beneath the glittering surface. The story of the Mitchell-Hedges skull reads like an adventure novel penned for the silver screen. Its legend is inextricably tied to the charismatic figure of F. A. Mitchell-Hedges, a British adventurer who claimed to have uncovered the artifact in the 1920s. The setting was the overgrown ruins of Lubontan, a lost Mayan city in Belize. The discovery, as famously recounted by his adopted daughter Anna, was a moment of pure cinematic drama. She described finding the flawless crystal skull buried beneath a collapsed altar, as if it had been waiting centuries for her arrival. This single, vivid image of a young woman unearthing a treasure in a forgotten jungle city is irresistibly powerful. It suggests a direct, almost magical link to an ancient and enigmatic past. The skull itself is a marvel of carving, sculpted from a single block of clear quartz and featuring a separate, perfectly fitting jawbone that moves. For those who believe in its ancient origins, this intricate design is the ultimate proof. They argue that such precision work, especially the movable jaw carved from the same crystal block, would have been impossible for the Maya to achieve with their known stone tools. This perceived impossibility is the fertile ground where legends take root. Over time, the skull was said to be far more than a mere artifact. Stories circulated that it possessed psychic powers, that it could project holographic images of past events, and that its true origin was not in the Maya world at all, but on the sunken continent of Atlantis. This narrative has everything: a dashing explorer, a hidden city, a miraculous discovery, and an object of immense supernatural power. It is a perfect story, which is precisely why we must look at it with a careful and critical eye. The reality of its provenance, the documented history of where it came from, is far murkier and less romantic than the legend suggests, inviting us to question the very bedrock of this unforgettable tale. While the Mitchell-Hedges skull thrived on romantic adventure, another legendary artifact found its home in the hallowed halls of a museum. The Paris skull, now residing in the Musée du Quai Branly, presents a different kind of enigma, one wrapped not in jungle vines but in academic pedigree. Its documented history begins not with a dramatic discovery but with a simple acquisition. In the late 19th century, the French explorer Alphonse Pinard purchased the skull and later donated it to what would become the Musée d'Elham. Its origins were stated as Mexico, a broad and tantalizing label that offered little concrete proof, but just enough geographical possibility to fuel speculation. Because it lacked a cinematic backstory, the Paris skull cultivated its own mystique through a different currency, perceived scientific legitimacy. Its very presence in a major institution seemed to whisper that this was not a mere curiosity, but a genuine artifact worthy of serious study. This legitimacy opened the door for a new kind of investigation, one that blended early 20th century metaphysics with a growing public fascination. Researchers and psychics began to report strange phenomena associated with the object. Some claimed it emitted a faint, otherworldly luminescence in a dark room. Others said that sensitive individuals could see visions or hear phantom sounds when in its presence. These stories transformed the skull from an archaeological piece into a psychic battery, an object that seemingly interacted with human consciousness. For the museums that housed it, this created a complex dilemma. They were institutions built on empirical evidence, yet they now possessed an item that the public viewed through a lens of pure mystery. The Paris skull forced a confrontation between the rigorous demands of science and the powerful human desire for wonder. It marks a critical point in our story, the moment these objects were institutionalized, transitioning from private collectors' items into subjects of intense and often controversial academic and public inquiry. This tension between what we can prove and what we feel to be true would only intensify as more skulls came to light. The very substance of the crystal skulls holds a secret of its own. To truly grasp the mystery surrounding these objects, we must first look at what they are made of: quartz crystal. This is not a soft or forgiving material. Quartz ranks a 7 on the Mohs scale of hardness. For perspective, that places it just below topaz and sapphire, and it is far harder than steel. Shaping it, even today, is a monumental challenge that requires diamond-tipped tools, as diamond is one of the few substances hard enough to cut and engrave quartz. This single fact immediately raises a critical question. How could an ancient civilization, working only with stone, wood, and abrasive sand, have produced such large, perfectly polished objects without a single telltale scratch or a misplaced groove? We know that cultures like the Maya and Aztec did create beautiful, small objects from quartz, including intricate beads and delicate figurines. Yet nothing in the entire archaeological record of the Americas comes close to the size and flawless symmetry of the most famous crystal skulls. The leap in skill and scale is so vast that it seems to belong to a completely different era of technology, but the mystery of the material goes even deeper than its hardness. Quartz is piezoelectric. This means that when you apply pressure or vibration to the crystal, it can generate a tiny electrical charge. This is not mystical speculation. It is a fundamental property of the mineral, one that is the basis for modern timekeeping in your wristwatch and the precise electronics in your phone. The critical point is that this property was only formally discovered and understood by Western science in the late 19th century. So, if the skulls are genuinely ancient, how did their creators know to work with this specific, electrically active mineral? For some, this is the most compelling piece of evidence. It suggests the makers were not merely skilled artisans, but possessed a knowledge of physics that seems impossibly advanced for their time, pointing to a lost science or even a technology that we have yet to fully comprehend. This idea, born from the very nature of the crystal itself, propels us directly into the heart of the technological debate. So how exactly would an ancient artisan have approached such a daunting task? To understand if creating a crystal skull was possible, we need to step into their workshop. The primary method for working hard stones like quartz was a technique called percussion flaking. Imagine an artisan striking a block of quartz with a hammerstone made of an even harder material like basalt or jadate. With careful, controlled blows, they would knock off larger flakes to slowly rough out a basic shape. This was not a delicate process. It was loud, brutal work that risked shattering the entire piece with a single miscalculated strike. Once the rough form was established, the real marathon began. For the finer shaping and the final, glassy polish, they turned to abrasives. They would use sand, crushed quartz, or even precious jade dust, mixing these gritty powders with water. Then, using simple tools made of wood, bone, or hollow reeds, they would grind the surface for countless hours, perhaps even years. The abrasive did the actual cutting, slowly and relentlessly wearing the quartz down, molecule by molecule. We have stunning proof that these methods worked. The ancient Maya and Aztecs produced breathtakingly intricate objects from jade, a material nearly as hard as quartz. Exquisitely detailed mosaic masks and finely carved ceremonial axes demonstrate a mastery that commands respect. These were not primitive craftspeople, they were master lapidaries. But here is the critical leap. Creating a small, intricate bead or a flat plaque is one thing. Crafting a large, three-dimensional human skull with its complex curves and perfect bilateral symmetry is an entirely different challenge. And then, to carve a separate, movable jaw from that same block of crystal, a piece that fits so perfectly it seems to click into place, pushes these known techniques into the realm of the nearly miraculous. The absence of obvious tool marks, often cited as proof of lost technology, can be explained by this exhaustive, final polishing stage. Yet the sheer, staggering amount of labor involved forces us to ask a deeper question. What possible motive would drive an ancient society to devote what might have been a lifetime of skilled labor to create a single, transparent object? In a world where resources and human effort were precious, the creation of a crystal skull would have been an act of almost incomprehensible dedication. The romantic legends surrounding crystal skulls began to crumble under the cold, hard gaze of a microscope. A pivotal moment in this decades-long mystery arrived not from a jungle expedition, but from a cardboard box mailed to the Smithsonian Institution in 1992. Inside was an anonymous donation, a large, milky quartz skull with no note and no return address. This ghostly artifact presented a unique opportunity. Freed from the weight of a famous name or a dramatic backstory, it became a perfect subject for pure, unbiased scientific inquiry. Researchers at the Smithsonian subjected the skull to the most advanced forensic analysis available. They used a tool called a scanning electron microscope, a device so powerful it can reveal the microscopic landscape of a surface, magnifying it thousands of times. What they discovered was a silent confession etched into the crystal itself. The surface was covered in tiny, parallel, arcing scratches. To the untrained eye, these marks would be invisible, but to a materials scientist, they were as clear as a signature. These minute grooves were the unmistakable fingerprint of a high-speed, rotary tool, the kind used by modern jewelers and lapidaries. This tool, with a wheel coated in industrial diamond abrasive, spins at thousands of revolutions per minute, leaving this distinctive, curved pattern with every pass. The evidence was undeniable. There were no signs of the random, multidirectional scratches left by the slow, hand-powered abrasion of sand and water. This was not the work of an ancient artisan patiently grinding for a lifetime. It was the work of a 19th or 20th century workshop equipped with modern technology. The Smithsonian's findings were a landmark. For the first time, the debate was no longer just about stories and feelings. It was about empirical, repeatable data. This forensic approach marked a decisive turning point, shifting the entire conversation from romantic speculation to a methodical search for the truth, one microscopic scratch at a time. The evidence was mounting, and it was about to get a lot heavier. The British Museum, home to one of the most famous crystal skulls, could no longer ignore the questions swirling around its own prized possession. This particular skull had a curious provenance, having been purchased from the famed Tiffany & Company jewelry house in 1898. Its origins were always hazy, but its presence in a world-class museum gave it an air of unshakable authenticity. That aura was about to be put to the test. Following the Smithsonian's lead, the museum's own conservators launched a meticulous investigation, employing the full arsenal of modern science. They used electron microscopy to peer into the skull's microscopic surface and X-ray diffraction to analyze its crystalline structure. What they found was a perfect match to the Smithsonian's discoveries. The smooth surfaces were not so smooth under extreme magnification. They were inscribed with straight, parallel grooves, the kind that are impossible to create with hand-powered tools. These marks were the signature of a high-speed, rotary wheel, a piece of technology that simply did not exist before the Industrial Revolution. The evidence did not stop there. The very substance of the skull told its own story. Scientific analysis traced the type of quartz crystal to specific sources in Brazil and Madagascar. This was a devastating blow to the ancient Mesoamerican theory. There is no evidence, not a single shred in the archaeological record, of any trade route that connected the ancient Maya or Aztec civilizations with these distant regions thousands of miles across the Atlantic Ocean. The conclusion was inescapable. The British Museum published a detailed report stating that their iconic skull was almost certainly a product of the 19th century, likely carved in a European workshop specializing in curios and antiquities. This was not just one institution's opinion anymore. It was a powerful, independent corroboration. When two of the world's most respected museums, using rigorous scientific methods, arrive at the exact same conclusion, the romantic legend of the ancient crystal skull begins to look less like history and more like a beautifully crafted fantasy. So we arrive at the logical next question. If the skulls were not made by ancient hands, then whose hands carved them? The trail of microscopic evidence and material sourcing leads directly to a small town in Germany, a place synonymous with gem cutting for hundreds of years, Idar, Oberstein. Nestled in a region rich with quartz deposits, this town was home to generations of artisans whose skills were unparalleled. By the 19th century, their traditional craft was supercharged by new technology. They began using foot treadle and later motorized rotary tools, devices that spun at high speeds with tips embedded with industrial diamond dust. This was the exact combination needed to carve hard quartz efficiently and leave those distinctive parallel marks scientists would later find. But technology alone does not create a phenomenon. There must be a market, a desire, and the 19th century had an insatiable appetite for the exotic. Fueled by exploration, colonialism, and a romantic fascination with lost civilizations, wealthy Europeans and Americans developed a powerful craving for antiquities. They wanted tangible pieces of history for their private cabinets of curiosities, and if genuine artifacts were scarce, convincing replicas would do. The workshops of Idar Oberstein were perfectly positioned to meet this demand. They began producing a flood of objects from small amulets to large carvings, all styled to look ancient. The crystal skulls were likely part of this output. It is crucial to understand that these were not necessarily created as malicious hoaxes intended to deceive scholars from the start. Many were probably sold as decorative curios, beautiful souvenirs representing the mysterious cultures of Mexico and Central America. A tourist on a grand tour might buy one as an elegant memento, fully aware it was a modern reproduction. The problem began when these objects changed hands. A curio sold to one collector would be described as an old Mexican carving. The next owner, perhaps a decade later, would interpret that to mean genuinely ancient. With each sale, the story grew more elaborate, the provenance more shadowy, and the supposed age more immense. A simple souvenir, through the game of telephone that is the antiquities market, was slowly transformed into a relic of Atlantis. The skulls themselves did not change, but the stories we wrapped around them grew into legends, proving that the most powerful magic they ever possessed was our own boundless capacity for wonder. The romantic tale of the Mitchell-Hedges skull discovery begins to fracture under the weight of documented history. Independent researchers digging into the timeline found a startling absence of proof. There are no records, no expedition logs, and no contemporary accounts that place F.A. Mitchell-Hedges at the Lubonton site in 1924, the very year his daughter Anna claimed to have found the skull beneath a fallen altar. The artifact's first official appearance is far less cinematic and much more commercial. It surfaces not in a jungle, but in a London auction house. In 1943, the skull was put up for sale at Sotheby's by its owner, an art dealer named Sidney Burney. The auction catalogue made no mention of a dramatic Mayan discovery. It was simply listed as a crystal skull. The most damning evidence comes from Mitchell-Hedges himself. In his own book, Danger My Ally, which details his adventures at Lubonton, he never once mentions finding a crystal skull. Such a spectacular find would surely have been the centerpiece of his narrative, yet the pages remain silent. This glaring omission suggests the entire discovery story was a later fabrication, a layer of romantic fiction added to transform a purchased curiosity into a priceless relic. The value of an artifact is never just in its material, but in the story it carries. When that story is proven to be a carefully constructed myth, the object's perceived magic evaporates, leaving behind only a beautiful but modern piece of craftsmanship. Yet the physical form of these objects tells only half the story. Their true power for many believers lies not in their disputed history, but in the extraordinary abilities they are said to possess. Beyond being mere carvings, they are often described as cosmic computers, capable of storing vast quantities of information from ancient cultures or even extraterrestrial visitors. Some claim they are powerful healing devices, emitting vibrations that can cure illness and restore balance to the body. In workshops and private sessions, practitioners use them to amplify psychic energy, believing the skulls can act as lenses to focus intention or as gateways to other realms of consciousness. The most captivating claims suggest they are windows in time, allowing those who are sensitive enough to peer into distant pasts or potential futures. These experiences are frequently tied to modern spiritual practices like channeling, where individuals enter a meditative state and report receiving direct messages, wisdom, or warnings from the consciousness of the skull itself. For those who have these profound and personal encounters, the skulls are undeniably real tools of transformation. The experience of feeling a connection to a lost world or receiving a personal insight is powerfully validating. However, these deeply meaningful encounters exist in a space that science cannot enter. They are built on the bedrock of subjective belief, which is personal and untestable. The human mind is a remarkable instrument for finding patterns and meaning, especially when presented with a beautiful, enigmatic object that has been pre-loaded with a legend. The power of suggestion is immense. If you are told an object is 1,000 years old and holds ancient wisdom, your mind is primed to perceive something extraordinary. The faint play of light within the quartz can become a vision. The quiet of a meditation room can be interpreted as a psychic message. This does not make the experience any less real to the person having it, but it firmly roots the phenomenon in the psychology of the beholder. In the end, the greatest mystery of the crystal skulls may not be where they came from, but why we are so compelled to project our deepest hopes for magic, meaning, and connection onto their glittering, silent faces. Perhaps the most ambitious legend to emerge from this mystery is the prophecy of the 13 original skulls. This grand narrative claims that 12 life-sized skulls and one larger master skull were crafted by the enlightened minds of Atlantis. The prophecy itself is a compelling piece of modern mythology. It foretells a future moment of global crisis when humanity stands on the brink. At that pivotal hour, if all 13 skulls can be brought together in one place, they will activate as one. Their collective consciousness will awaken, unlocking a vault of ancient wisdom designed to guide us toward salvation. This story offers a powerful framework of hope, a promise that hidden help exists for our deepest modern anxieties about environmental collapse or societal breakdown. Yet this entire epic, for all its emotional resonance, appears to be a 20th century invention. Scholars who have traced its origins find no roots in any documented Maya, Aztec, or other indigenous oral traditions. Instead, its DNA is woven from earlier spiritual movements, particularly Theosophy, which popularized the idea of Atlantis as a source of lost wisdom. This prophecy is not an ancient message, but a new myth created to meet a contemporary need. It transforms the skulls from static artifacts into active participants in a cosmic drama. They are no longer just beautiful objects to be studied, but sacred tools with a destined role to play in human evolution. This evolution of the law reveals something profound. The crystal skull phenomenon is not static. It is a living tradition. It has grown beyond the question of mere authenticity into the foundation of a new spiritual narrative, one that provides meaning, purpose, and a sense of magical possibility in a world that often feels stripped of both. This anthropological perspective forces a necessary and sobering shift in the narrative. The very cultures whose names are so often invoked in these tales, the Maya and the Aztec, have their own voices, and they tell a very different story. For many contemporary indigenous peoples, these crystal skulls are not considered sacred relics of their ancestors. In fact, the entire phenomenon is frequently viewed as a profound act of cultural appropriation. It is a process where European and American storytellers, collectors, and spiritual seekers have projected their own fantasies and desires onto indigenous cultures, effectively silencing authentic traditions in favor of a more convenient and exotic myth. This is not a minor point of political correctness. It strikes at the heart of the mystery's ethical dimension. Authentic Mesoamerican spiritual traditions are deeply rooted in the land, in the cycles of agriculture, in the complex relationships within a community, and in the worship of specific, well-documented deities. They are not centered on portable, all-powerful objects like the crystal skulls of legend. You will not find these skulls mentioned in the Popol Vuh, the sacred Maya text of creation, nor are they depicted in the surviving Aztec codices. The idea of a single, transcendent artifact holding the key to universal wisdom is a distinctly Western concept, one that aligns more with the Holy Grail than with the communal, earth-based spirituality of these ancient civilizations. This viewpoint challenges the very foundation of the romanticized narrative. It forces us to ask a difficult question: who does this mystery truly serve? The pursuit of these skulls often carries the faint echo of a colonialist mindset, where the other is seen as a repository of secret knowledge, there for the taking by those brave or clever enough to decipher it. It turns living, complex cultures into a backdrop for an adventure, their real history and spiritual depth replaced by a more palatable and ultimately fictional fantasy. The real lost wisdom, then, may not be locked inside a piece of quartz, but in our own failure to listen to the descendants of the very civilizations we claim to be so fascinated by. The very substance of the crystal skulls carries a geological passport, one that scientists have learned to read. Beyond the microscopic marks left by tools, researchers turn to the internal chemistry of the quartz itself. Using precise techniques like trace element analysis and spectroscopy, they can identify the unique chemical signature of a crystal, much like a detective can trace a specific batch of sand to a particular beach. When these methods were applied to several of the most famous skulls, including the one held by the British Museum, the results were unequivocal. The geological fingerprints pointed directly to quartz deposits in Brazil and Madagascar. This finding is not just a minor detail, it is a tectonic shift in the narrative. It erases any plausible connection to the ancient Maya or Aztec worlds. We know from extensive archaeological evidence the exact sources these civilizations used for their own quartz objects. They were all local, quarried from the mountains and riverbeds of Central America. The idea that a Mayan artisan would have a massive, flawless block of Brazilian quartz on their workbench is as anachronistic as finding a smartphone in a pharaoh's tomb. There were no vast cargo ships crossing the Atlantic in pre-Columbian times to deliver such raw materials. This geological evidence stands completely independent from the analysis of tool marks, yet it points to the exact same conclusion. Two separate lines of rigorous scientific inquiry, one examining how the skulls were made and the other what they were made from, converge on a single, inescapable truth. These iconic objects are not ancient relics, but products of a much more recent and interconnected world. The glittering surface of a crystal skull can be a master of deception. Our own eyes and our brain's innate desire for pattern recognition are active participants in the mystery. Clear quartz is a master of light, bending it, reflecting it, and scattering it in 1,000 dazzling directions. This internal fireworks display does more than just create beauty. It acts as a perfect visual smokescreen. The constant play of light and shadow across the curved surfaces can easily obscure minor tool marks, slight asymmetries, or subtle imperfections in the carving. We are not just looking at a carved object, we are looking at a prism, and our perception gets lost within it. Our minds are hardwired to recognize the human face, and when we see the familiar contours of a skull rendered in such a pure, sparkling medium, we subconsciously complete the picture. We perceive a level of mathematical precision and flawless symmetry that feels otherworldly. But what happens when we strip away the light and the suggestion? When museum researchers used precision calipers to take exact measurements of the most famous skulls, the myth of their perfection evaporated. They found clear and measurable asymmetries, one eye socket slightly larger than the other, a jawline that was not perfectly aligned. These were not the errors of a godlike technology, but the telltale signs of human craftsmanship, even if that craft was aided by modern tools. The skulls are beautiful, but they are not geometrically perfect. This gap between what we feel when we look at them and what the calipers reveal is the very engine of their legend. Our sense of wonder, amplified by the crystal's natural magic, creates an optical illusion of the impossible, convincing us we are in the presence of something that transcends human skill. Archaeology rarely stands a chance against a thrilling story. The crystal skulls owe their legendary status not to academic journals, but to the powerful engines of popular media, which took a curious artifact and transformed it into a global icon. In the early 20th century, pulp adventure magazines were the first to weave tales of lost cities and psychic relics, planting the seeds of the myth in the public mind. These stories presented the skulls as objects of power and danger, perfectly tailored for an audience craving escapism and mystery, but this was only the beginning. The true explosion came decades later with films like Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. The movie did not just reference the legend, it supercharged it, placing a crystal skull at the center of a globe-trotting adventure filled with otherworldly consequences. For millions of viewers, this was their first and most memorable encounter with the object. The film presented the skull not as a potential fake, but as an indisputably ancient and powerful artifact, a key to interdimensional knowledge. This portrayal was far more compelling than any dry museum report. The media's formula is consistently effective. It highlights the mystical allure, the romantic discovery, and the promise of hidden power, while systematically ignoring the scientific evidence of modern tool marks and anachronistic quartz sources. This creates a powerful feedback loop. A blockbuster film reignites public fascination, which leads to new television documentaries, magazine articles, and online discussions, all of which repeat and embellish the romantic narrative. This cycle continually reinforces the legend, making the skulls feel like established fixtures of a mysterious past. The sobering facts from museum conservators simply cannot compete with the emotional resonance of a perfectly crafted adventure story. We are wired to remember and retell exciting narratives, not forensic reports. This dynamic reveals the true power of the hoax. Its success was never dependent solely on the skill of the carvers in Idar Oberstein, but on our own deep-seated desire for a world where magic is real. Lost civilizations hold profound secrets, and a single artifact can change everything. The crystal skulls persist because we want them to be true. Our desire for the skulls to be real is perhaps the most powerful force keeping their legend alive. This psychological pull is a classic example of a phenomenon called confirmation bias, a mental shortcut where we unconsciously seek out and favor information that supports what we already want to believe, while dismissing or minimizing anything that contradicts it. For someone who feels a deep spiritual connection to a crystal skull, the evidence is not found in a laboratory report but in a personal experience. The way light dances inside the quartz feels like a confirmation of its vibrant energy. A vivid dream or a sense of peace during meditation becomes unshakable proof of its power. When faced with the cold, hard data of modern tool marks, confirmation bias offers a convenient escape hatch. A believer might rationalize that the marks were added later, perhaps by a restorer who did not understand the artifact's true nature, or that the advanced civilization that created it used tools so sophisticated they left traces that only look modern to our limited understanding. The lack of a clear provenance for some skulls is not seen as a red flag, but as a blank canvas onto which a more beautiful story can be painted. This is not a sign of ignorance or foolishness. It is a fundamental feature of human psychology, a trap we are all susceptible to. We are storytelling creatures, and we are deeply comforted by narratives that align with our hopes for a world filled with magic and mystery. The crystal skulls become powerful symbols in that personal narrative. This is why critically evaluating any extraordinary claim requires a conscious act of mental discipline. It means actively seeking out the disconfirming evidence, the facts that challenge our most cherished beliefs. It asks us to question not only the object, but our own motivations for believing in it. The real journey, then, is not into a lost jungle, but into the intricate landscape of our own minds, where the most compelling mysteries are often the ones we create for ourselves. Behind every great legend, there is often a simple, unromantic truth. The soaring demand for pre-Columbian artifacts in the 19th and early 20th centuries created a gold rush, and the crystal skull was its perfect treasure. Wealthy industrialists, ambitious museums, and private collectors were all desperate to own a tangible piece of the exotic past, creating a market where immense sums of money were exchanged for rare antiquities. But genuine museum-quality artifacts were scarce. This gap between intense demand and limited supply created a vacuum, and skilled artisans were more than willing to fill it. A masterfully carved crystal skull, presented as a relic from a lost Mayan city, was not just a curio, it was a high-value commodity. The initial lapidaries, particularly those in centers like Idar Oberstein, were not necessarily sinister forgers. They were brilliant craftsmen responding to a clear market signal, producing objects of stunning beauty that their clients wanted to believe were ancient. The real alchemy happened not in their workshops, but in the subsequent chain of ownership. An art dealer purchasing a skull for a modest sum had a direct financial incentive to weave a more compelling story around it before selling it to a wealthy enthusiast. That new owner, having invested a significant amount, then became an unwitting promoter of the myth, their own financial stake making them more likely to believe and embellish the tale. With each transaction, the provenance grew grander and the price tag swelled. The romantic story of a jungle discovery was not just a fun anecdote, it was a crucial part of the object's appraisal, transforming a beautiful piece of modern craftsmanship into a priceless, ancient relic. This commercial context forces us to view the entire phenomenon through a different lens. The mystery of the crystal skulls is not merely a conflict between science and spirituality, but a stark reminder of how powerfully cold, hard cash can manufacture and sustain an enchanting illusion. The true wonder of a crystal skull may not lie in a mythical past, but in the tangible skill of a modern artisan's hands. To see the process today is to watch a mystery unravel in real time. Contemporary lapidaries, masters of stone carving, take on the challenge using a blend of traditional techniques and tools not unlike those from the 19th century. Their workshops are filled with the constant, grinding hum of rotary tools, the air thick with the fine dust of crushed diamonds. They begin with a raw, cloudy block of quartz, carefully mapping out the shape of a skull within its crystalline structure. Then, with a combination of diamond-tipped saws and grinding wheels, they slowly, painstakingly remove everything that is not the skull. This is not a swift process. It can take months or even over a year of relentless, focused labor to coax the final form from the unforgiving stone. The final stages are a testament to pure patience, as the artist progresses through ever finer abrasives, each one polishing away the scratches left by the last until the surface achieves that legendary liquid smoothness. The skulls that emerge from this demanding process are stunning. They possess the same weight, the same brilliant clarity, and the same mesmerizing play of light as their famous counterparts sitting in museum display cases. In many cases, they are virtually identical. This demonstration is profoundly revealing. It shows us that while the creation of a crystal skull demands immense skill, patience, and a deep knowledge of materials, it is entirely and unequivocally within the realm of human capability. There is no need to invent lost civilizations or advanced alien technology to explain their existence. The explanation is right here, in the dust-covered hands of a dedicated craftsperson. These modern creations are celebrated for what they truly are: magnificent works of art. They carry no burden of a false history, no weight of a fabricated prophecy. They stand solely as a testament to human ingenuity and perseverance, proving that the most magical element in this entire story was never trapped inside the crystal, but has always been alive in the creative spirit of the people who shape it. This fundamental conflict is the engine of our entire story. Science builds its case with the quiet authority of a microscope, pointing to the undeniable grooves left by a modern tool. Speculation, on the other hand, speaks the language of the heart, offering a vision of lost worlds and psychic awakenings. One demands proof, the other thrives on possibility. This is a battle fought not just over crystal skulls, but over the very nature of truth itself. Where do we place our trust, in the data we can measure, or in the experiences we feel so deeply? This great divide appears everywhere we find a tantalizing mystery. Consider the ongoing debates over ancient structures like the pyramids, where conventional archaeology clashes with theories of advanced, lost technology. Or the world of paranormal investigation, where personal encounters with spirits stand in stark contrast to the silence of electronic monitoring equipment. In every case, the same two forces are at play. The scientific method, by its very nature, is a process of disproof. It seeks to break down claims, to test them until only the most robust facts remain. For those who find magic in a myth, this can feel like a cold and clinical act, a deliberate extinguishing of wonder. It is as if a beautiful, intricate painting is being analyzed solely for its chemical pigments, its emotional power completely ignored. Yet this rigorous process is also a form of respect. By removing the layers of modern fantasy, we are left with the genuine and often more impressive accomplishments of real people. The true magic is not that a mythical Atlantean used a laser to carve a skull, but that a 19th century German artisan with incredible patience and skill mastered an unforgiving material using the tools of their time. That is a human wonder we can actually touch and understand. The story of the crystal skulls, then, is a powerful lesson in where we choose to direct our awe. Do we invest it in a comforting fiction, or do we save it for the tangible and sometimes even more remarkable reality? The crystal skulls are far from the only relics that have woven a spell over the public. Our history is a graveyard of beautiful lies, of archaeological hoaxes that once commanded belief before crumbling under scrutiny. Take the infamous case of the Piltdown Man. Unearthed in England in the early 20th century, it was presented to the world as the ultimate discovery, the missing link between apes and humans. For decades, it sat in textbooks and museum displays, its human-like skull and ape-like jaw seemingly offering perfect proof of a specific theory of evolution. It took over 40 years for the truth to emerge. The entire specimen was a crude forgery, meticulously stained to look ancient, constructed from a medieval human cranium and the jawbone of an orangutan. The scientific community had been completely fooled, not by a masterful fake, but by one that told them exactly what they wanted to hear. Then there is the Cardiff giant, a sensation of 19th century America. This massive figure, supposedly a petrified man from the biblical era, was dug up on a farm in New York. Crowds flocked and paid good money to see the marvel. It was, in reality, a simple statue carved from a block of gypsum, a scheme concocted by a businessman to make a quick profit from a public hungry for a spectacle. Parallels to the crystal skulls are striking. Each case begins with a story that feels almost too good to be true. Each one arrives during a period of scientific uncertainty or public fascination, creating a perfect vacuum for a myth to rush in. Each is eventually exposed not by a sudden revelation, but by the slow, steady application of new analytical techniques, whether chemical testing or microscopic examination. And in every instance, a segment of the public remains stubbornly attached to the legend long after the evidence has spoken. Why is this pattern so persistent? These hoaxes succeed because they are not just objects, they are narratives. They offer a shortcut to wonder, a tangible piece of a more exciting, mysterious world. By studying these cautionary tales, we can train ourselves to ask better questions. When faced with an extraordinary claim, we can learn to pause and consider the source. We can look for the motivations, the financial incentives, and the gaps in the story. This is not about becoming cynical, but about developing a healthier, more robust form of curiosity, one that appreciates the beauty of a story while still demanding the rigor of the truth. Perhaps the most telling evidence in this entire saga is not found under a microscope, but within ourselves. The crystal skulls persist in our imagination precisely because they answer a profound and deeply human need, a hunger for mystery that rational explanations can never truly satisfy. We live in an age of answers where a quick search on a device in your pocket can demystify almost any phenomenon. Science has mapped our genes and charted the cosmos, offering logical, data-driven explanations for the world around us. Yet, this very completeness can leave a void. There is a part of the human spirit that craves the shadowy corners of the map, the places still marked here be dragons. The crystal skulls are perfect vessels for this longing. They are not just objects but portals. They offer a tangible connection to a romanticized past where history was not a slow march of progress, but an epic filled with lost continents, psychic powers, and civilizations far wiser than our own. This narrative is far more emotionally satisfying than the documented truth of 19th century workshops. It transforms history from a dry academic subject into a personal, spiritual quest. This is why the debunking, no matter how scientifically rigorous, never fully sticks for everyone. The facts address the object, but they do not address the yearning. The mystery serves a crucial emotional purpose, offering a sense of wonder and possibility that a world fully explained sometimes lacks. It allows us to believe, if only for a moment, that the universe is still a place of hidden magic waiting to be found. One name surfaces again and again, a ghost in the machine of this entire mystery, Eugene Boban. He was not a jungle explorer or a mystic, but a sophisticated French antiquities dealer operating out of Mexico City in the late 1800s. Boban stands as the crucial historical link, the man who physically placed several of the most famous crystal skulls into circulation. We know he sold the very skull that would later be acquired by Tiffany and Company and find its way to the British Museum. His sales pitch was tailored perfectly for his era. He presented these stunning carvings as genuine Aztec relics, tapping directly into a European obsession with the dramatic and often misunderstood cultures of ancient Mexico. Boban himself was a fascinating contradiction. He was a respected academic in some circles, even serving as an archaeological advisor to the Mexican court, yet he also operated firmly within the lucrative gray market of curios and collectibles. This dual identity allowed him to lend an air of scholarly legitimacy to objects that, under scrutiny, could not support their own weighty claims. His direct involvement shifts the entire conversation. It moves the origin of these skulls out of the fog of ancient prophecy and plants it firmly in the documented, commercial world of the 19th century. We are no longer dealing with abstract possibilities, but with a specific man in a specific place at a specific time, selling specific objects to a hungry market. This grounding in historical fact is perhaps the most powerful tool we have for understanding the entire phenomenon. It shows us the mechanism, the human hand that first set these beautiful, enigmatic objects on their long journey into legend. So their true story is now etched not in legend, but in museum labels. The great institutions that once displayed crystal skulls with an air of mystery have largely rewritten their placards. You will now find them described not as pre-Columbian artifacts, but as objects probably carved in 19th century Europe. This is a profound shift in identity. Their value has been completely transformed. They are no longer archaeological treasures from a lost world, but they have become something equally fascinating. They are historical artifacts of a different era, the 19th century's own obsession with the exotic and the mysterious. They stand as masterpieces of lapidary art, showcasing a breathtaking level of human skill. And perhaps most importantly, they have become permanent case studies in the long and colorful history of forgery. Yet, in the realm of popular culture, none of this scientific reclassification seems to matter. The skulls have escaped the confines of the museum case to become free-floating symbols. They represent the idea of ancient mystery itself. This has created a permanent dual identity. In one world, they are beautiful fakes with a documented and sobering history. In another, they are powerful icons of the unknown. This split is likely to endure for generations. The skulls will continue to be displayed and studied, but their primary purpose will not be to tell us about Atlantis. Instead, they will serve as mirrors, reflecting our own society's complex and often contradictory relationship with the past. They show us how we use science to seek truth, and how we use myth to fill the spaces that truth cannot reach. They are a permanent exhibit on the enduring human need for wonder, a need so powerful it can project magic onto a piece of carved crystal and keep the legend alive long after the facts have spoken. Our journey ends not with the bang of a lost civilization, but with the quiet hum of a modern workshop. The evidence has spoken in a clear, consistent voice. Microscopic grooves betray the touch of a high-speed rotary tool. The quartz itself carries a geological signature from Brazil and Madagascar, far from any ancient Mesoamerican trade route. The romantic discovery stories have dissolved under the harsh light of documented history, revealing a trail that leads back to 19th century artisans and savvy dealers like Eugene Boban. The verdict is as close to certain as history ever allows. These iconic skulls are not relics of Atlantis or the Maya. They are magnificent fakes born from a perfect storm of human skill, commercial opportunity, and a burning desire for the exotic. So why, after all this, do they still hold us in their glittering thrall? The answer lies not in the skulls, but in us. They are empty vessels, and we are the ones who fill them with meaning. We pour our longing for a more magical world into their transparent forms. We crave the idea of a lost wisdom, a secret history that is more thrilling than our own. This human need for mystery is a powerful force, one that can transform a beautiful piece of carved stone into a legend. The ultimate lesson of the crystal skulls is a lesson in discernment. It asks us to hold two truths in our hands at once. We can admire the breathtaking skill of the lapidary who spent a year shaping flawless crystal, and we can also recognize the fabricated tale that was wrapped around it. We can feel the pull of a good story while still valuing the quiet dignity of the proven fact. The real treasure we unearth from this entire adventure is not a magical artifact, but a sharper set of tools for our own minds. In a world saturated with compelling illusions, the ability to question, to investigate, and to think critically is the most powerful magic of all. The skulls remain beautiful and enigmatic, but their greatest secret was always our own boundless capacity for wonder.